Honourable Simon Power.
Mr Speaker, although I'm the mover of this bill, a colleague of mine actually completed the moving motion and the first speech and the first reading of this bill. I've checked with thank you very much, Attorney. I've checked with the Clerk of the House and there's nothing under standing orders to prevent me, as I understand it, from making a contribution at this point, which I intend to do. Mr Speaker, this is an extremely important piece of legislation for a number of reasons. The first is that for too long this country has allowed the abuse and the killing of children to occur in an environment where a cone of silence has been able to descend upon the households and wider families of those people who should have been responsible for the lives of those young children. Now, my colleagues today have given some examples, in fact on both sides of the House have given some examples of where that has occurred. And I'm reluctant to give this piece of legislation a specific reference point, a specific case which has been through the courts or may still have yet to travel through the court process. And I think, see the Honourable Rick Barker over there will agree with me that when the Minister of Justice holds that particular warrant, it would be inappropriate for them to be discussing both a case before or a case that's been through the courts with reference in this way. But we have to finally face up to the fact that there are a series of continuous tragedies occurring in this country that are going unchecked by this Parliament. Now, that is not a criticism of previous governments or, for that matter, this government, quite obviously, but to say this Parliament now has an opportunity to say to the public of New Zealand, actually, we have heard the message that the public has been relaying to members of this House for many years now, and that message is quite straightforward, Mr Speaker, and it is stop sitting on our hands when it comes to children being abused, mistreated and killed in households where families, family members and regular attendees at those houses are not sticking their hands up and saying something is not right here. I know what happened and I am going to take some responsibility and come forward. We need legislation which gives a clear message to those people. They are not narcs. They are people who are protecting those who most need their protection. Young, small and vulnerable members of our society who cannot speak for themselves, who the media only portray and we only know through their photographs being on the front pages of newspapers and leading television bulletins when it is too late. After the fact, while we sit in our cosy homes watching the faces of these children, innocent children, being beamed into our living rooms, and we have somehow over a long period of time developed a legal system that has enabled people who were close to those incidents to remain silent. And this bill says today that that travesty must stop. That responsibility will lie with those individuals and people who could have done something or said something for those who have died or been mistreated who could not. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the contributions of those members of the House who have agreed to support this matter to a select committee for various submissions to be heard. I have to say, as I get around the country and talk about the areas that have been reformed in the justice system, not just in the last 2.5 years, but over the last 4 to 5 years in particular, nothing gets a group of New Zealanders more engaged with those meetings than this issue, than the fact that it is not a problem that we can regard as limited to particular communities, to particular parts of our country. The truth is, we do not treat our children as well as we should. We do not treat vulnerable members who cannot speak for themselves with the dignity that they deserve. This bill may not change all of that, Mr. Speaker, but what it will do is strip back this bizarre situation where those people who have been in sufficient proximity to a child, who are neither the parents, thus under a duty, nor perpetrators of the offending, nor parties in a legal sense, those people must have a level of culpability in coming forward to describe and to inform society about what has occurred. Now, we have made some other changes to the Crimes Act to address some of the broader sentencing issues and the necessities issues. But this model of turning one's back on a child who has died or been maltreated, and then the police and others in authority being unable to penetrate that cone of silence in a way that sees justice left waiting, that has to stop, Mr. Speaker. That has to stop. And members opposite say, well, why send it to the Social Services Committee? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is it is a child-centred bill. And the second is we want to get this thing moving as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker. Those are the two reasons it will go to that committee. Now, I don't doubt, actually, that members opposite who have contributed to this debate are any less genuine than other members in their appreciation of how serious this issue is. But I am disappointed when members say things like government ministers, myself included, haven't taken the issues of domestic violence and the treatment of women in those violent relationships seriously. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that is just wrong. The introduction of public safety orders, the changes that we're making to our criminal justice system, those are all sure signs. And the sad part about it is, Mr. Speaker, when they talk about the domestic violence reform bill only having 2/3 of it advanced, that is a cynical statement. When that bill was introduced to the House by the last government on the 30th of September 2008, and this House rose for the general election on the 26th of September. After the House rose for the general election, that party introduced a bill to try and deal with these issues. Don't come to this House and tell this government we are inactive on this issue. We are taking action today, and I look for the House to support those who need this support tonight, Mr. Speaker.
The question is the motion be agreed to. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker?
We've had 12 calls.
Oh, have we?
We have.
Oh, regretfully.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote. The clerk will conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
58 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
42 votes in favour.
Green Party.
9 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
5 in favour.
Māori Party.
E whāpoti e tautoko ana.
Progressive.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Honourable Chris Carter.
1 vote opposed.
Hone Harawira.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 112, the noes are 10. The motion is agreed to.
Crimes Amendment Bill number 2, first reading.
Honourable Simon Power.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Crimes Amendment Bill number 2 be referred to the Social Services Committee for consideration, and that the committee report finally to the House on or before 18 August 2011, and that the committee have authority to meet at any time while the House is sitting, except during oral questions, during any evening on a day on which there has been a sitting of the House, and on a Friday in a week in which there has been a sitting of the House, despite Standing Orders 187 and 191B and C.
The question is the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary no. The ayes have it. Call on Government Order of the Day number 5.